Hey all, Scott here. I'm from the best generation, the worst one. And what we have is special Monopoly without indoor plumbing. We don't need no electricity for fun. Here, look at me. I'd like to see a Game Boy do that.
Well, joke's on them, I still don't have indoor plumbing.
The medium of video games has given us some of the most creative and mind-blowing interpretations of entertainment ever conceived. A painting may show you a vast world filled with nothing but possibilities, but a video game can bring you there, allowing for infinite options on how you consume what the artist has laid in front of you, truly being one of the most lucrative methods of telling a story, creating a universe, developing beloved characters, and especially giving people an experience they couldn't have anywhere else. Jenga! Board game video games. Now, I'm not talking video game board games.
Unless you want me to.
I'm talking video games based on board games. Everybody's played a board game, but have you ever played a board game alone? Most board games are meant to be played with a handful of friends, all huddled around a table. The physicality of moving pieces around, picking up cards, rolling dice, all while having conversations and fighting about the game at hand. It makes for an experience, while sometimes incredibly simple, still effective to this day. Board games will never go out of style. It's not as if video games replace them. They've just always been a different type of fun. So it only makes sense to try and harness the power of a game like Monopoly and instill it into a video game. You get the best of both mediums, a tried and true titan of board games, now in the form of video games. This is Monopoly for the Sega Master System. Monopoly.
That's an oxymoron.
Monopoly is probably the most well-known branded board game in the world. I mean, it's been going on since 1935 and has received hundreds, maybe even thousands of variants. You got Best Buy Monopoly, UPS Monopoly, Bass Fishing, Sun-Made, Heinz. Well, you know how to get me interested in something. But hey, the sheer amount of different versions alongside how every family seems to have slightly different rules on how they play Monopoly shows how this is a game that you're truly supposed to play how you want. For example, when my friends and I play, we don't use dice. So damn, I suppose I'll get to choose how I play Monopoly on Sega Master System. I choose not to. Monopoly video games are surprisingly frequent for how piss boring they can be. I feel like they shower you in too much information on screen at once, and it ends up feeling like I'm playing Monopoly as a cyborg. And they either have too much background music, sound effects, voice acting, animation, or the alternative.
I have cancer.
Yeah, the alternative is worse. But a game like Monopoly for Nintendo Switch, I can appreciate the amount of polish this has, but it gets to the point of overkill. Every time I roll the dice and watch my piece go around the board, the pace and movement just feels so exaggerated. Like if this was real life, 1, 2, 3, 4! This version also features the ability to shake your controllers to roll your dice, with the rumble replicating the feel of them in your hand. Say anything you want about this game, but you can't deny it declutters our lifestyle. To be fair, we can turn off all this garnish and tweak the rules to fit our Monopoly playstyle. Everybody has their own. And the presentation has an undeniable amount of quality to it, even if it can be a bit much. This game runs at like 20 frames a second, like you couldn't get 21 out of Monopoly? But the user interface is clean and understandable, plus they push the aesthetic of a Monopoly board to its near limits, taking advantage of the fact this is a video game. We can play on a classic board if we'd want, but why do that when we can play in a city, an amusement park, a haunted house, or just play Monopoly on Super Nintendo to get that classic experience?
Man, they don't make them how they used to.
What, with hands?
This version of Monopoly hit the major consoles at the time: NES, SNES, Game Boy, Sega Genesis, and makes the artistic choice not to include background music. Come on, not even a faint ringing? That's what I hear when I play Monopoly. But hey, these, alongside pretty much every other video game version of Monopoly, function. Sure, the newer releases are superior, but you can still make do with the worst fucking thing I've ever seen in my life, because all the video game versions of Monopoly thrive at something the board game can't.
My turn.
If you were dead right now, what would I do?
Single player Monopoly. Come on, that's a genuine selling point. You're telling me you haven't been in this scenario? Yeah, I can't really say I've had the urge to play Monopoly when nobody's looking. That doesn't mean these games don't have worth. They're just not fun, which is why video game variants of Monopoly have been offered. Monopoly Madness, Streets, Tycoon, versions of the game that were specifically designed as a video game from the ground up, not just a straight up conversion of the board game. But you can't really go wrong with any of these. At their worst, they're bad, but they're still Monopoly. I don't think anybody's expecting anything revolutionary from Monopoly Party. The only thing I'm expecting is a ransom note to follow. You know, while most of these games are fine for what they are, it's pretty wild how unfun they can make one of the most iconic and beloved and least fun board games of all time.
Alright, can we play something else? I promised myself I wouldn't play a bad version of Monopoly.
We can play Monopoly.
No, I promised.
Please, I could go bankrupt without this game. Here's $40,000.
Well, when there's Monopoly, Clue is sure to follow. Another classic game owned by the same folks that also gets thousands of variants. Who Killed Nemo? Well, let's see how the video game adaptation of it holds up. It uses a lot of the same assets from Monopoly on Super Nintendo, but this time, it's a horror game. Let me show you the scariest thing in the title. No, I left the sink on. Well, it's more of a mystery game. You pick from a selection of characters, like Colonel Mustard.
What war do they even serve in?
Oh, don't worry, just the good ones.
Each player gets a handful of cards which tells them who, what item, and which location wasn't involved in the murder, to which everybody has to spend the game questioning the others to decipher what cards they have so they can whittle it down to the correct answer. It's a timeless board game that unfortunately got a bit botched in the transition to electricity. So much of the game depends on the original form factor. Want to look at your cards? Well, pray the other players won't peek at your screen.
You fool! I don't believe in God!
Want to keep track of the suspects? Well, if you're playing single player, sure, use the on-screen notepad, but in multiplayer, I mean, why keep asking the other players to look away when things pop up on screen? Just get out a pen and paper like the actual board game, which, unlike the board game, we don't get a pad of paper with this game, so just add our suspects to the shopping list. I got confused. So as a single player version of Clue, this works, but in multiplayer, it's unbelievably inferior. Having to keep looking away from the screen when others want to look at their cards, you pretty much have to crack out a pad of paper if you're playing this way, which at that point, why are you playing the video game?
Alright, any guesses? I wrote down the murderer is guilty.
Yeah, I got Colonel Mustard with the milk in the Walmart.
I got Baltic Avenue. That dirty son of a bitch. I'll never be able to eat mustard like this again.
Because of the more secretive nature of each person's cards and information, Clue hasn't received nearly as much attention in the video game space as Monopoly, with most releases being oddball PC games, a VHS tape game, mobile games, etc. But a version for Nintendo Switch based on one of said mobile games launched in 2018. Multiplayer with this one is limited to online only, which makes sense to keep people from screen peeking, but also to add value to this compared to the original board game. Online Clue. Hey, you want to play Clue? Get the f out of my house! This release probably has the most value of any e-Clue out there. You have a handful of different boards and can play as a whole slew of character variants, plus there's paid downloadable content and add more of them. This is pretty good, but I do think it's a little bland overall. The tactility of holding the cards and using a pencil and paper to keep track of the suspects added tremendously to the Clue experience. Here, I'm just pressing A a bunch. That's not really the game's fault, though. I think that's what makes these types of games so much more enjoyable on PC and on systems like the Wii. Moving the pointer around, it's so much more natural to play these types of games with this compared to with a directional pad. Yeah, I like my board game so I like my coffee. Good. Which is why the Wii got a whole slew of board game video games. Most notably, the Hasbro Family Game Night series. See, this is how you do it. Multiple board games in one package. Of course, they picked some of the lesser ones. Ones I'm sure they doubted themselves being able to sell standalone. Man, Hasbro owns so many game brands, this series could have been endless. But alas, we got 4 games on the Wii by Electronic Arts, and then a bit of a revival on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch, though these games are more so bundles of pre-existing full-fledged games, including Monopoly for Nintendo Switch. Back on the Wii, these are more akin to minigame collections. For the most part, the board games are still here, but not at the same level as full standalone releases, and are no replacements for such. But man, Family Game Night includes Boggle?
Oh, this will be great for us! We call ourselves the Boggle Brothers.
I didn't know you two were related.
Oh, we aren't. It's just a name we use.
Oh, so you just really love Boggle?
What's Boggle?
Either way, I'm sold. All right, we got Yahtzee, Battleship, Connect Four, Sorry, Boggle, and Sorry Sliders. Sorry Sliders always felt like an incredibly pointless spin-off of Sorry. Like, What? Just because you can slide the pieces, let's make a variant of the game that has nothing to do with the original? You just slide the pieces now? What's the point of this? Oh, that is. Battleship, a game all about keeping your ship formation secret. Oh, a mole. A mole! How does nobody notice this? He's watching every move I make! Really makes you think, looking back through history, but oh my god. Boggle is as Boggle's been, at least I assume. Never really played this game.
Come on, man. He didn't know Boggle first.
Connect Four, Sorry, and Yahtzee, you're all pretty faithful to their real-life counterparts. There's a couple extra modes here and there. It's not a bad package, just an underwhelming one. These are kind of the B-tier Hasbro board games. You can name Monopoly all you want, but there's a reason it's gotten dozens of video game adaptations where it's the only game in the package. And there's a reason it has thousands of variants and Yahtzee doesn't. They can make a Goatopoly. They couldn't make a Goat-Z.
Right?
That's why in Family Game Night 2, we got an upgrade to the game lineup.
That's not Boggle.
Nothing is.
Man, what's the point of this? Pretty much all the games included here are incredibly simple, can easily be played by yourself in real life, so that advantage of a video game version just isn't here. Just in general, these don't benefit from being video games, or they're just too different as video games. To be fair, they translated something like Operation about as well as you could, but it's Operation. Why do I want to play this in video game form? Same goes for Bop It. It's Bop It! Pictionary is pretty much a Where's Waldo type experience, so wow, they pulled it off.
If they can do that, what board games can't they bring to the Wii?
How about ad-libbing or filler dialogue or like a reference to something that just happened?
Yeah, they can't do that because it's not a board game.
Connect 4x4, oh come on, that should have been an alternate mode in the first game. Jenga? I remember playing a Jenga game on the iPod Touch back in the day, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. The controls worked well, and it was a fun time waster. On the Wii, I mean, it works, but this just feels much more unnecessary and sluggish to control. Jenga worked so well on the go because it's a game you just couldn't effectively play anywhere. You ever played Jenga on the plane?
Sure, but
That's not ideal, meaning a portable video game take on it works incredibly well and feels very justified. A home console game though, like, why? Because you don't want to clean up after playing?
oh, damn it!
So not only does this version feel a bit forced, it just doesn't control the greatest. There's way less nuance pulling a block away compared to just using the touchscreen of the app version. It feels like the Wii game just doesn't understand exactly how hard or soft you're truly yanking these out. But in the end, it's something you could get used to. This is fine, I guess. But maybe they improved upon it in the standalone release, Jenga World Tour. Free Jenga. It feels good to be a part of something. I love games that allow me to step foot into a role I've never been in before. Slot Machine Cowboy. But Jenga World Tour keeps things familiar by giving me a piss-poor Jenga experience. But this is beyond piss. This is a straight-up kidney stone. How does Jenga World Tour have a 26 on Metacritic?
What, is it bad or something?
Timber! It's game over.
No.
That's not even good wood.
My God, what the f is that?
This is the most finicky thing ever. The depth perception is egregious, and on top of that, it's just fucking Jenga. At the time, this retailed for $30, and what do you get for that? Well, non-functional blocks, say what you will. It's impressive for bricks not to function. No online, which for a game titled Jenga World Tour, like, this is pretty damn Ohio. I want to play against people from around the world. Michigan, Indiana, give me a world tour. This is genuinely one of the worst games I've ever played, and it mostly all comes down to the abhorrent controls. Everything else is fine in concept. There's a mode where you can use power-ups, a decent handful of different settings and block types. If it was actually fun to play, you'd have a fine enough Jenga. But instead, they went for something honestly far more impressive. The worst goddamn thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, really?
Oh, okay, well that is worse.
But back to the Family Game Night series, the third entry has a ton more of the in-depth board games featured, ones they could have made as their own standalone releases, so as of now, this seems to be the title with the most value. Clue, The Game of Life, Mousetrap, Yahtzee hands down, Twister. See, if they were clever, they could use the Wii balance board, or maybe even a game where you have to try and hold down certain buttons on the Wii remote at the same time, which is something Wii Party U did. That would be a really cute way to adapt Twister into a video game.
But picture this. No.
It's a rhythm game now. Tap the buttons in order. That's not Twister. That's just common courtesy. The rest of the games are fine, albeit fairly lifeless interpretations of the source material. I mean, Mousetrap is pretty much a straight conversion of the board game, but damn is it lame as hell. I would want to go see Niagara Falls in person when I can draw you this picture of it instead. Some of these games here are just too reliant on the tangibility of the board game versions that I wish they'd either replace them or try a little harder to adapt them in more clever ways, which, hey, for the next title, they did just that. Based on a game show, based on the video game franchise, based on the board games, this is Family Game Night for the game show.
No, this is unfortunate.
Yeah, take the actual adaptations of the timeless games and turn them into 2-minute-long minigames that might have something to do with the original. What the f*** is a Boptagon? These are fine, but they're over so quickly and don't have the replay value the actual board games have. Scrabble Flash is enjoyable for a few minutes, but enjoyable enough to pop this game in every time to play? In previous games, they had remixed versions alongside the classic titles. Why couldn't they have done that here? Instead, the main attraction is the game show mode, which has you play each of the games one after another, and 20 minutes later, it's done. Yes, a perfect replacement for the real board games. The Family Game Night series is quality, yet never felt thought out enough to be warranted in my opinion. They could have chosen different games and reworked them in smarter ways to make them work as video games far better. And what they ended up doing was either just the same goddamn thing as the board game or Twister. But next up, I want to take a look at some games that harness the spirit of the Family Game Night series without the starch. The multi-game packs on Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS. I don't know if there's an overarching series name for these things other than Jesus Christ. These are all pretty cheaply made, but they do the job. Being on handhelds make them feel far more justified. You can play whenever, wherever you want, by yourself or with others if multiplayer is offered. And these may be made on a budget, but I honestly find that they have a whole lot more worth than
Uh-oh, T-minus 10 seconds.
Oh, a stork.
Way to go, blue team.
All right. Next word.
Stork?
No. Big bird.
The genre is I'm sick.
Dude, he's getting fucking shot.
Way to go, blue team.
That's pretty sick.
It's also pretty sick. What? Did you just stop?
Way to go, blue team.
Yes.
All right, so I can pick between Junior Pictionary and Adult Pictionary.
Oh, no, don't do adult. I don't want to draw a mortgage.
Okay, Junior. I can draw dirty laundry,
Do you really want to draw a corpse?
weekend trips, fishing.
Isn't that spelled with a PH?
This one isn't working out. But I promise you guys, we will get a legitimate board game experience. How about Battleship?
I am gonna hit you with a blunt object.
I do understand Boggle now.